You're listening to The Jacob Valk Show. He's breaking down the latest and greatest in sports as only he can. Follow him on Twitter at RealJacobValk. Here he is, Jacob Valk.
Hello, sports fans! Welcome to another edition of the Jacob Valk Show. I am Jacob Valk. And this weekend was probably the busiest weekend we've had in sports this year. We've got a bunch of baseball trades, bunch of football news, a couple really sad deaths, and obviously the NBA and NHL playoffs. The weekend of August 29th and August 30th, 2020. The busiest in all of sports this year. Yeah, that sounds right, late August. I gotta start with the NBA playoffs, and this is kind of disjointed, the way that the NBA did this. They started the second round of the Eastern Conference side of the bracket before we even know the matchups on the Western Conference side of the bracket. I mean, I know why they did it. It's just kind of disjointed. Today, you're going to have a second round matchup and a first round matchup. And even then, that first round matchup isn't a Game 7. It's a Game 6. But even though it's disjointed, I think I worked out the right way to talk about the playoffs. I'm going to break down the two Eastern Conference semifinals, and you'll see what I'm going to do for the Western Conference. I don't want to get too ahead of myself. I'll start with Bucks Heat. The Magic gave the Bucks a scare. Give them credit. I mean, how's this for a stat? The 4 teams in the second round of the Eastern Conference side of the bracket only lost 1 game between the 4 of them. And it was the Bucks that lost that game. The number 1 seed lost Game 1, and that was it. Every other one of the favorites swept. Like I said, 2020. The thing that scares me with this series is the Bucks obviously revolve around Giannis. And I don't mind that. I mean, Giannis is Giannis. Of course the team is going to revolve around him. But he really doesn't have much support. Chris Middleton has been good, not great. Brook Lopez has been good, not great. Eric Bledsoe has been good, not great. Where's the support coming from? Giannis can dominate a team like the Magic. He can do that with one arm tied behind his back. But he's not going to be able to do that against the Heat. He's going to need help. The Heat are by far and away a better team. It's not even close. And when you look at that Heat team, they are so much more well-rounded than the Bucks. Goran Dragic has had a great playoffs. Same thing with Jimmy Butler. I was downing him when the playoffs started, but playoff Jimmy Butler has shown up. Give him full credit. Tyler Hero's had a really good playoffs. His first time in the playoffs, and he's averaging 16.5 points, 4 rebounds, and 3 assists per game. That's pretty impressive. Bam Adebayo is a double-double threat every night. Really good defender. Is actually leading the Heat in assists per game in the playoffs. It's not Dragic, it's not Hero, it's Bam Adebayo. How impressive is that? Duncan Robinson has been shooting the ball well. Kendrick Nunn, the last game of the Pacers series, got involved. This is a tough matchup for the Bucks. Because Jimmy Butler is gonna make Giannis work. Giannis will still get his, but Butler's gonna make him work. Same thing with Iguodala. Jay Crowder, too. I think the Heat are going to surprise some people in this series. I really do. But having said that, I think the Bucks are just going to be too much for the Heat. I do think that Chris Middleton is going to show up. Make no mistake about it, Chris Middleton is the key to this series. He's the secondary scoring option for the Bucks. Giannis isn't going to be able to do it all by himself. He's just not. So, they're going to need Middleton to step up. Middleton was not great in games 1 through 3 of the Magic series. Then in games 4 and 5, he woke up. Had 21 points and 10 rebounds in both games. Eric Bledsoe, too, is going to need to step up as the tertiary scoring option. If the Bucks don't get consistent performances from guys not named Giannis, this is going to be a really tough series for him. But like I said, I think Middleton is going to step up. Bledsoe, I think, can step up. I'm going to say Bucks in 6. Moving on now to the second round matchup that already started, and that is Raptors-Celtics. I'm still going to make a pick for it. We're only one game in. It's not the end of the world. The only thing that can't happen is a Raptors sweep. That's it. That's all we know right now. One thing that really surprised me about Game 1 was Marcus Smart going off. I mean, we all know that Marcus Smart is going to lock down defensively. He's one of the better perimeter defenders in the game. But in the Sixers series, he never scored more than 14 points. You thought of him as just a guy who could get you about a dozen points per game and play good defense. Well, Smart decided to forego defense just for one night and just ball out. He was the high man along with Jason Tatum with 21 points, 6 for 10 from the field, 5 for 9 from beyond the arc. The Celtics were clicking on all cylinders. Jaylen Brown dropped 17. Kemba Walker had a double-double, 18 points and 10 assists. Daniel Tice, in 25 minutes, had 13 points and 15 rebounds. That is insane. Robert Williams played well off the bench, 10 points, 5 rebounds. Enes Kanter did not play. He didn't get into the game at all. Brad Stevens evidently decided that a front court of Tice and Williams was good enough. And seeing as though the Celtics won by 18 points, I don't see Stevens changing things. I mean, no one on the Raptors really impressed me. Siakam was terrible. Marc Gasol was non-existent. Kyle Lowry was okay, but he only shot 1 for 5 from beyond the arc. And he combined that with Fred VanVleet's dismal performance. 3 for 16 from the field and 2 for 11 from beyond the arc. Yeah, you're going to get blown out if you're the Raptors. Serge Ibaka played well. 15 points, 9 rebounds. Wouldn't mind him on the Nets. But that was it. He was the only impressive player to me for the Raptors. I promise you this was going to be my pick before the series started. And given the way the Raptors played in Game 1, I'm hesitant to even give them this many games. But I'm going to do it. I'll give guys like Lowry, VanVleet, and Siakam a couple games to really go off. But I do think the Celtics are going to be too much. I do think they're the more talented team. I'm going to say Celtics in 6. Moving on now to the Western Conference matchups. And I want to recap the last games of the first 3 series, and then for Rockets Thunder, I'll preview their game tonight. So I'll start with Game 5 of the Lakers Trailblazers series. I give the Blazers credit. They fought hard without Damian Lillard. CJ McCollum played nearly the full game. He played 46 minutes and dropped 36 points. You can't ask for any more than that. He was insane. And Carmelo Anthony, too. 27 points in 40 minutes. Yusuf Nurkic also had a double-double. The Blazers played really well, but at the end of the day, without Damian Lillard, they really didn't have much of a chance. And you combine that with the Herculean efforts by LeBron James and Anthony Davis, it's kind of impressive that they only lost by 9. LeBron had a triple-double. Anthony Davis dropped 43 points. Yeah. Of course they did. Tough break for the Trailblazers. If Lillard had played in this game, they would have won it. But ultimately, the Lakers were the better team. And hey, I said Lakers in 5 before the series started, and I was right. So, good job, Jacob. Moving on now to Clippers Mavericks. And this game was obviously exciting because pretty early on, Luka Doncic and Marcus Morris got into it. Morris gets ejected with the flagrant 2. I mean, obviously there's history there between Morris and Luka. Morris stepped on Luka's shoe. And Morris is just a bully. Make no mistake about it. I'm not saying that in a bad sense, it's just the truth. He's a really tough player. And he tried to knock Doncic off his game. That's what Morris does. I will tell you the biggest play of that game was Boban Marjanovic wrapping Luka up so he couldn't do anything incredibly stupid. First up, in a fight between Doncic and Morris, I'm taking Morris. Second up, if Doncic throws a punch, he's out, and the Mavericks lose by 50. So a really good job by Boban there. ultimately, without Porzingis, the Mavericks really didn't have much of a chance in this game. I don't want to say that Kawhi and Luka cancel each other out, but this game really turned into a battle of the secondary options. And the Clippers have Paul George, who's waking up. He wasn't great, but he wasn't bad. 15 points and 9 rebounds. I'll take it. He tied with Ivica Zubac for the second most points by a Clipper in that game. Zubac had a double-double. Reggie Jackson off the bench had 14 points. Ultimately, I'll take that group over Tim Hardaway, Dorian Finney-Smith, and Trey Burke. Finney-Smith did play a good game. I'm not knocking him. That was his best game of the playoffs. But he can't be the second option if the Mavericks are going to win. Tim Hardaway was having a really good playoffs, and then he laid an egg in this game, 2 for 11 from beyond the arc. Trey Burke, 2 for 10 from the field. Maxi Kleber, 3 for 10 from the field. See, what the Magic do with Porzingis out is they put Kleber in that Porzingis role offensively. The thing is, Kleber is nowhere near as talented as Porzingis. It doesn't work. Instead of rejiggering the whole system, Carlisle just goes next man up. I like Rick Carlisle, but I don't like that he does that. The Mavericks made the Clippers work in this series. Luka cemented himself as one of the best players in the game today. The key for them going forward is just keeping Kristaps Porzingis healthy, and I wish him luck. Moving on now to yesterday's Nuggets-Jazz game. And I don't know what else to say other than I'm really looking forward to another battle between Jamal Murray and Donovan Mitchell. I mean, you have to give Murray a ton of credit. The Jazz go up 3-1 in this series. Game 5, Murray balls out, scores 42 points. And then in this game, Murray drops 50. He's going to be eligible for a big extension soon. There were some people saying before this series started, I don't know if I'd give him that big contract. I don't think he's earned it. Well, after this series, regardless of what happens, you have to give Murray that contract. I mean, if you were to tell me that a Nugget was going to take over this series, I'd have said, okay, great, Nikola Jokic is going off. No, it's been Murray. I'm not saying that Jokic has been bad, but what Jamal Murray has done is nothing short of incredible. He's firmly established himself as one of the best young players in the game. Before the series started, if you asked someone to make a list of the best players in the NBA, 25 or younger, would Jamal Murray be in your top 10? Would he be in your top 15? Would he be in your top 20? Now he's firmly etched himself there. Give him all the credit in the world. As for the Jazz, Donovan Mitchell is doing his best here. You can't fault Mitchell at all, but the guy needs help. Rudy Gobert needs to step up. I understand he had a double-double, but in 42 minutes, he has to have more than 11 points. Royce O'Neal, if he's going to play 38 minutes, he has to have more than 5 points. I understand he's a defensive stopper, but if you're going to play that many minutes in a potential elimination game, you've got to step up and do more. Joe Ingles, too. 30 minutes, only 5 points. He only made 1 3, only attempted 4 of them. That is dreadful. I give Mike Conley credit. He's come back and has looked really, really good. But the Jazz really need their other guys to step up. Gobert, O'Neal, and Ingles. If they get a repeat performance, the Jazz are going home. Alright, now it's time to preview Game 6 of the Rockets-Thunder series. And for the Rockets, I'd like them to get Russell Westbrook a little more involved. I understand that Game 5 was his first game back. So of course he's going to take it easy. I'm not knocking him. He did Russell Westbrook things out there. 7 points, 6 rebounds, 7 assists. He shot 3 for 13 from the field, which I didn't like. I want him to hit some more shots. I really want him to be the second best player on the Rockets. Not Robert Covington, not Eric Gordon. It has to be Westbrook. As for the Thunder, while I've really enjoyed watching Luguentz-Dort play in this series, I didn't know much about him before this series. Now I really like watching him play. He cannot take 16 shots. I don't know what was going on in Billy Donovan's mind when he decided it was a good idea to have Luguentz-Dort take 16 shots. He attempted more shots than any member of the Thunder. He attempted more shots than James Harden. I mean, it's one thing if you're going to hit those shots. Okay, fantastic. Dort was atrocious. 3 for 16 from the field. 0 for 9 from beyond the arc. He only had 6 points. That was one of the worst shooting games I've ever seen in the playoffs. That was John Starks bad. Let Danilo Gallinari take those shots. Let Shea take those shots. Hell, get Steven Adams more involved. I've been screaming for them to do this for as long as this series has been going on. Billy Donovan did a terrible job in Game 5. It was predictable that it wasn't going to work. I don't know what was going on in Donovan's mind. I really, really don't. Mike D'Antoni had to be doing backflips. Moving on now to the Stanley Cup playoffs. And I'm going to break down all 4 of the semifinals. And I am going to start with Flyers Islanders. Oh my God. I am stunned at what they've been able to do. They have thoroughly outplayed the Flyers in every game of this series. Game 1, 4-0 shutout. Game 2, yes, the Flyers win, but they got off to a 3-0 lead, and then they blew it. They ended up winning in overtime, but they still blew a 3-0 lead. They blew a 2-goal lead in the third period. The Islanders have gotten to Carter Hart. It's insane. I'm at a loss for words. Thomas Greiss comes in to start the back end of the back-to-back, and he stands on his head. He made 36 saves. I mean, the Islanders played like garbage in the second period yesterday. Greiss single-handedly kept them in that game. The Islanders only had 3 shots the whole period. And they somehow found a way to win. Think about this for a second. Just put yourself in my shoes for a minute. I've been an Islander fan for 23 years. I have never seen them win multiple games in a second round. They are 1 win away from going to the conference finals. Something that they haven't done since 1993, before I was born. 2 seasons after losing John Tavares for nothing. You lose out on Ryan O'Reilly. Last year, you lose out on Artemi Panarin. You don't keep Robin Lehner. But Barry Trotz implements this defense-first system. Mitch Korn whips these goalies into shape. And now this group of really no-names. I mean, if you were to ask the casual hockey fan to name as many current Islanders as he could, he'd name Barzal, he'd probably name Anders Lee, maybe he'd name Josh Bailey, maybe he'd name Pajot. Would he get to Nelson? Would he get to Eberle? Would he get to Beauvillier? Would he get to any defenseman? Would he be able to name a goalie? I remember watching a Sports Center, and this was years ago. This was like 15 years ago. Franz Nielsen had scored a goal. The Sports Center anchor didn't know how to pronounce his name. That anonymity has been going on for years, for decades. It's why in Decades of Dumbass Decisions, I had Little Brother as an entry. You have to give Barry Trotz credit. Whatever credit you give him, it's not enough. The guy has earned a lifetime contract with the Islanders. I'm not kidding. If I'm Lamoriello, I'm signing him to a lifetime contract tomorrow. And speaking of Lamoriello, I've given him a ton of heat. At the end of the day, he was the GM who couldn't convince Tavares to re-sign. He missed out on all these big trades. He decides to go with a bunch of no-names, Komarov, Martin, Hickey, Filppula. Then he misses out on Artemi Panarin. He doesn't bring Lehner back again. I'll repeat myself there. But give him credit. He made the big trade for Pajot. Semyon Varlamov has been insane. You can go back to the Beyond the Game right after Tavares left. I said it was the wrong decision for Lamoriello to try to put together a win-now team. I wanted the whole team blown up. Everyone but Barzal and Beauvillier. Open season. I give Lamoriello all the credit in the world for not listening to me. Even this year, I wanted them to go out and make a big trade. Lamoriello did it for Pajot and Andy Green. Now this Islanders team, a team that at the time of the pause was out of the playoffs, is 1 win away from meeting the Tampa Bay Lightning most likely, in the conference finals. I am gobsmacked at what they've been able to do. Nothing short of gobsmacked. Speaking of the Lightning, they are showing that they are the better team between them and the Boston Bruins. Vasilevsky played really well in Game 4, made 29 saves. The Lightning top six, guys like Palat, Kucherov, Point, and Johnson, have been insane. Victor Hedman, showing why he's one of the best defensemen in the NHL. At the end of the day, Yaroslav Halak can only take you so far. I've seen this movie before. He's not a money goalie. He's allowed at least 3 goals in the last 3 games. When Tuukka Rask left, that was it. The Bruins really had no shot in this series. They gave the Lightning a scare. They won Game 1. They took Game 2 to overtime. But in the last 2 games, the Lightning have outscored the Bruins 10-2. I think Game 5 is going to be a romp in favor of the Lightning. I really think tonight they're going to etch their place in the Eastern Conference Finals. Moving on now to Avalanche Stars. And my God, do I look like an idiot. I said that the Avalanche were going to sweep the Stars. I said they were my pick to represent the Western Conference in the Stanley Cup Finals. Now, granted, I didn't think Philip Grubauer would get hurt. And if Grubauer was healthy, the Avalanche are in much better shape. I mean, they probably win Game 1. They definitely win Game 4. At the end of the day, what we're learning here is that Pavel Francouz just stinks. Alright, I understand you can only expect a backup goalie to do so much. And the Stars have a backup goalie in net, in Anton Khudobin. But at the end of the day, you should expect your backup goalie to be competent. Brian Elliott was competent yesterday. Thomas Greiss was more than competent. Marc-Andre Fleury was competent yesterday. Francouz has been nothing short of atrocious. In his 3 starts this series, he has allowed at least 4 goals. I mean, I give the Avalanche credit for showing up offensively. And to be fair, one of those goals was not Francouz's fault. Cale Makar passed it off Francouz's skate, and it went in the back of the net. If that doesn't happen, the game goes into overtime, and God only knows what happens after that. But the point is, Francouz has not done well. If I'm Jared Bednar, I'm giving serious thought to starting Michael Hutchinson. You have nothing to lose at this point. Go for broke. And if he plays well, you look like a genius. If he doesn't play well, alright, you were down 3-1 anyway. Odds are you weren't coming back. As for the Stars, I give them full credit for what they've been able to do offensively. Jamie Benn has had a fantastic series. Same thing with Alexander Radulov, Radek Faksa, Rupe Hintz, Tyler Seguin, Miro Heiskanen, Blake Como, Dennis Gurianov, John Klingberg. The Stars are cooking right now. I mean, I don't know how far Anton Khudobin is going to take them against the Golden Knights. But give Rick Bowness credit. He replaces a good coach in Montgomery midway through the season. The Stars are playing like garbage at the time of the pause. They're another all-defense, no-offense team. And they were slipping. They were slipping hard. But when the restart hits, they weren't the most impressive team against the Flames. And they certainly haven't been incredibly impressive against the Avalanche. But at the end of the day, he's gotten this offense to click in the playoffs. That's what you have to give him credit for. And I give him all the credit in the world for it. I brought up the Golden Knights a little earlier, and it seems like I'm going to go 1 for 4 in my second round picks. I picked the Lightning, I picked the Flyers, I picked the Avalanche, and I picked the Canucks. Don't gamble based on my advice, is the moral of the story. I'll tell you one thing the Golden Knights have done that's really impressed me. They have exponentially frustrated Jacob Markstrom. I mean, I was watching that game yesterday. Right after the Islanders game, I flipped on Golden Knights Canucks. And after every goal, Markstrom looked really, really ticked. I've never seen him do that before. I've never seen him look that upset. And this wasn't upset in a good way. You know, sometimes it's good to play with anger. This was upset in the sense of, oh my God, how did I let that in? I'm terrible. That would scare me if I was Travis Green. Also, I said before this series that the Golden Knights don't have a good defense. And I stand by that, with the exception of Shea Theodore. Theodore is leading the Golden Knights in points in this series. He has 7 assists. Even guys like Nate Schmidt and Alec Martinez are playing well. I'll give him credit there. But Mark Stone has stepped up, Max Pacioretty has stepped up, Alex Tuch has stepped up. Marc-Andre Fleury comes in and looks competent. Robin Lehner has been standing on his head. Think about this for a second. The Golden Knights have been around for only 3 seasons. It is a distinct possibility that in their first 3 seasons in existence, they will make the Stanley Cup Finals twice. Give Pete DeBoer all the credit in the world. Moving on now to the MLB, and it is trade deadline day, so that's why you're getting a late show today. I want to be able to talk about all the trades that go down this day, all the big ones anyway. And no team has been busier than the San Diego Padres. I mean, make no mistake about it, the Padres are firmly in the playoff picture. They're 3.5 games up on the teams in that last playoff spot. Those are the Marlins, Phillies, and Cardinals. They have an incredibly aggressive GM in AJ Preller, who I like. I like aggressive GMs. You have to be aggressive in the right way, but Preller has done that. And more to the point, the Padres haven't made the playoffs since 2006. That year, they won the NL West. They had old man Mike Piazza behind the plate. Young gun Khalil Green as their shortstop. I remember when people were saying he was going to be just as good as Jeter. The pitching staff led by young gun Jake Peavy. Old man Trevor Hoffman, still great out of the bullpen. It's been a really long time since the Padres have had any notable success. 2010, they won 90 games, and they should have been in the playoffs, but the Giants were 2 games better than them. And the Braves were 1 game better than them to be the wildcard team. So yeah, it's been a really dark period for the Padres. But the coronavirus hits, and 2020 presents an incredible opportunity for the Padres to make the playoffs and go far. He is seizing this opportunity like no GM is. And he made no bigger trade than trading for Mike Clevinger, a guy who I didn't want the Indians to trade. I know why they did it. Clevinger violates team protocols. The Indians want to send a stern message. You don't listen to us, you're going to get traded. Again, I don't think that was the right way to go about this. I think they're throwing the baby out with the bathwater here. By hopefully next year, the coronavirus will be a distant memory. We'll hopefully have a vaccine. We'll hopefully have treatments that work. So to trade someone because of a temporary thing, that doesn't work for me. But, having said that, the Indians got a fantastic haul here. I mean, this sets them up incredibly well for the future. They traded Clevinger, Greg Allen, and Matt Waldron for Josh Naylor, Cal Quantrill, Gabriel Arias, Austin Hedges, Joey Cantillo, and Owen Miller. Clevinger, we all know about him. One of the best pitchers in baseball. That's undeniable. Not going to spend too much time on that. Greg Allen is just a quadruple A player. He has good speed. He's good in the outfield, but he is absolutely abysmal with the bat. He's only hitting 160 this year. I mean, my God. In 15 games, he only has 4 hits. In his career, he's hitting 239. Really not that exciting. And neither is Matt Waldron. I don't see him making too much of an impact in the bigs. And if he does, it's going to be a long time until we see him. I mean, he's only pitched 10 games in single A. But now on to the prospects that the Padres gave up. And this package is stunning. It starts off with someone who was a very highly thought of prospect. He's not a prospect anymore, but he's a really good young player. Josh Naylor has been really impressive for the Padres this year. He's hitting 278. He's not a power hitter. He's never been a power hitter. But his defense has gotten better. And he'll go a long way towards solidifying a dismal Indians outfield. Outside of Delino DeShields, they have no one that scares me. Franmil Reyes is really good, but he's been DHing more than anything else. And Tyler Naquin is having a good season this year, but he's just a backup. If the Indians can add another outfielder in free agency, that's a really impressive lineup. Cal Quantrill was another highly thought of prospect. He aged out of that last year. He didn't have a good rookie season, but this year he's turned it around. 2-0 with a 2.6 ERA. He's been coming out of the pen, though. I mean, that's a far cry from what he was expected to be. He was once expected to be a top-of-the-line starter. Now, much like his father, Paul, who I remember vividly with the Yankees, oh God, was he terrible. It seems like he's going to top out as a reliever. There's nothing wrong with that. I just wish that he could have made it work as a starter. He was really talented. I mean, the Indians' bullpen really doesn't need a lot of help. Brad Hand has been really good this year. So is James Karinchak, Nick Whitgren, Cam Hill. Oliver Perez has put together a really good year, surprisingly. Phil Matten, Adam Simber. They really didn't need to add another reliever. Maybe they're going to try to stretch Quantrill out as a starter. But you can never have too much pitching, so there's no harm in getting him. But the crown jewel in current prospects is Gabriel Arias. And I don't mind the Padres trading him. They have a great prospect in the minors by the name of C.J. Abrams. And Abrams is going to be a star in this league. According to MLB.com, he is the 26th best prospect in all of baseball. And you take a look at that Padres infield. They have Hosmer, they have Tatis, they have Machado. There's really only room at one other position. That's second base. Now, Jake Cronenworth has done a good job there, but he's not gonna be C.J. Abrams. I can promise you that. So the Padres had to trade Arias. But this guy is going to be a solid player. Fantastic defender. Good bat, can hit with power, really good athlete. He reminds me of Omar Vizquel, just with more power. Obviously, the Indians had Vizquel once upon a time. Now they have his clone. Joey Cantillo isn't the most impressive player to me. He has a really bad fastball. It barely hits 95. Barely. I mean, that's a once-in-a-blue moon type thing that you see him throw with velocity. The thing that makes him really good is his control and his changeup. He has a Tommy Kahnle-like changeup. And he has a good curveball. I think Cantillo can become a good reliever. But I don't think we're going to be talking about him as a future closer. Maybe a seventh inning guy at best. And Owen Miller is a solid, traditional middle infielder. Not going to hit for a ton of power. You'll probably get like 10 home runs from him a year. But he's really good with the bat. Really good line drive stroke. good singles/doubles hitter. Not great with the glove, but that's something that can be worked on. Miller's going to have a solid career, I think. And Austin Hedges, I skipped over him because he's really a nothing burger. Quadruple A player. Really not that good. Has some power as a backup catcher. I like that. Good defensively, I like that, but he doesn't hit for average. Doesn't get on base a lot. I don't like that. All in all, even though the Padres did give up a lot in terms of young guns and prospects, they still end up with one of the best pitchers in baseball today. The Padres really needed a frontline starter. Zach Davies and Dinelson Lamet are having good seasons, but they're not great. Chris Paddock has been okay at best this year. Mackenzie Gore is gonna be great, but he's not up right now. This makes the Padres a really scary team. I'll get into their other trades right after I say that the Padres won this trade. The Padres beefed up their starting pitching with Clevenger, and they beefed up their bullpen by adding Trevor Rosenthal from the Royals for Edward Olivares and the proverbial player-to-be-named later. Rosenthal is having a really good year. He got hurt in 2018, but before that, he was one of the best relievers in all of baseball. Last year, he was atrocious for the Nationals and Tigers. The Royals give him a shot, and he's pitched really well this year. 3.29 ERA, 7 saves. He was the Royals' closer. It goes without saying that the Royals are a terrible team. They don't need a closer. It makes perfect sense for them to trade someone on an expiring contract in Rosenthal. And when you look at Olivares, he's really athletic, good swing, has some power. The thing is, he has a really bad eye, terrible in the field. He's going to be a backup outfielder at best in the bigs. The Padres really needed to add some more help in the bullpen. Drew Pomeranz has been insane, but they really don't have much more besides him. Yes, they have Matt Strahm. Yes, they have Pierce Johnson. But that's pretty much it. Rosenthal is going to be a fantastic setup guy for him. Maybe even a closer. The Padres easily win this trade. The Padres also added some hitting, starting with Mitch Moreland. They acquired him from the Red Sox for Hudson Potts and Jason Rosario. Once upon a time, I wanted Mitch Moreland on the Yankees. I've always liked him. Really good player. Always really underrated to me. Good power hitter. Good average. He's won in this league before. Like I said, I've always liked him, and he makes perfect sense for the Padres. I think he's going to slide into right field, which means that Will Myers can move to left field. And left field has been a big black hole for the Padres. Jurickson Profar has been atrocious there. But on to the prospects that the Red Sox got. Hudson Potts is a beast. When you look at him, your jaw just drops. He's built like a Greek god. His power is insane. He's just kind of immature. Not in the sense of, he's a cancer in the locker room or anything, just in his approach. He really needs to clean up his approach. He always tries to drive the ball deep, and it results in a lot of flyouts. But Potts has a ton of talent. A lot of potential there. And Jason Rosario is a really, really freakish athlete. I mean, the Red Sox prioritized specimens in this trade. I don't mind that. This guy has fantastic speed, fantastic arm, fantastic range. He's going to be a backup outfielder in the bigs. I don't think there's a question about that. He doesn't have a good bat, though. He actually reminds me a little bit of Greg Allen, ironically. I know what the Red Sox are doing. It makes sense in theory, but there's a big chance that these guys can bust. I have seen great athletes bust as prospects. Courtney Hawkins being the one that pops into the front of my mind. I think the risk is too great. It makes too much sense for the Padres. They win this trade. I talked about A.J. Preller being an aggressive GM. Well, Jerry Dipoto is aggressive also. And those two guys combined for a really big trade, sending Austin Nola, Austin Adams, and Dan Altavilla to the Padres for Taylor Trammell, Ty France, Luis Torrens, and Andres Munoz. Austin Nola has burst onto the scene to become one of the best catchers in baseball. He's hitting .306 this year with 5 homers and 19 RBIs. For a catcher to do that, that's insane. And he's under team control for a really long time. He's not going to be a free agent until 2026. Austin Adams should give the Padres some added depth in the bullpen. Like I said, they really needed it. And Dan Altavilla should do the same thing. The thing is, he's really not that good. But the Padres gave up a lot here, starting with Taylor Trammell, a guy who I really like. He has 4 of the 5 tools that you look for. The only one he doesn't have is an arm. And you know what? I can live with that. He's not a quarterback. He's an outfielder. I understand you want your outfielders to have cannons for arms, but if they don't, it's not the end of the world. He's super athletic, really patient at the plate. The kid has a ton of talent. There's no question about that. Ty France has put together a really good year this year. He's hitting .309 with 2 homers and 10 RBIs. He has a ton of talent as a future corner infielder in this league. The Mariners need all the help they can get, so adding 2 really talented hitters makes a ton of sense. Luis Torrens is a solid backup, really good defender. He actually has a funny Yankees connection. He was a Yankees prospect once upon a time. The Yankees left him unprotected in the Rule 5 draft before the 2017 season. He had never played above single A, so the Yankees thought they were safe. Well, the Padres ended up with him, and they knew that he was going to be a project, but they saw the defense, and they liked it. And yeah, Torrens' bat hasn't developed yet. But his defense makes him a really good backup catcher. You can do a lot worse than having Luis Torrens as your backup catcher. And Andres Munoz has a ton of talent, played really well last year for the Padres, went 1-1 with a 3.91 ERA at the tender age of 20. I mean, this guy's fastball is off the charts. He reminds me a lot of Aroldis Chapman. He really does. He has that type of velocity. As good as Austin Nola is, and despite the fact that catcher is a premium position, he is not worth this haul. The Mariners got 4 players who I could really see contributing for them. 2 solid hitters in Trammell and France. You put Taylor Trammell in an outfield with Jared Kelenic and Kyle Lewis. That's going to be incredibly scary for years and years. France has a ton of talent. You can put him at DH, and he'll be fine. Luis Torrens, solid backup catcher. And Andres Munoz is going to be a really good reliever in this league for a long time. The Mariners easily won this trade to me. This was the first real head-scratcher for me for the Padres. Preller got too trade-happy. Preller wasn't the only GM to decide to get active at the trade deadline. Jeff Bridich also decided to become active, and he traded for Michael Givens from the Orioles. And in exchange for him, he gave up Tyler Nevin, Terran Vavra, and a player to be named later. Givens has shown that he can be a high-leverage reliever in this league. You can put him in anywhere. 6th inning, 7th inning, 8th inning, 9th inning, wherever. He'll get the job done. Was really good setting up Zach Britton. Brandon Hyde used him as his pseudo-closer last year. This year, he was bouncing around a lot between different innings. The Rockies already had a good bullpen with Daniel Bard, who's had a career renaissance. That's nice to see. Yency Almonte and Carlos Estevez. But you can always use some more bullpen help. I know why the Rockies went after him. But when you look at the prospects that the Rockies gave up, Tyler Nevin is a 5-tool player, has good bloodlines. He is the son of Phil Nevin. You can put him at first and he'll be fine. You can put him at third and he'll be fine. I like Tyler Nevin a lot. I think he has a really high ceiling. And Terran Vavra is another guy with good bloodlines. His father, Joe, is the hitting coach for the Tigers. And some of that rubbed off on Terran. His offense is off the charts. He can be a perennial 280 to 290 hitter with 20 home runs. He does have to get stronger. And he's not good in the field, but the talent is there. This makes a ton of sense for the Orioles. Even though they're technically in the playoff race, they're not going to do anything if they get there. I mean, they're 4.5 games out. It's still possible for them to go on a crazy run, but it's highly unlikely, and even if they do, they're going to be bounced in the first round. Givens isn't worth this haul. The Orioles easily win this trade. Moving on now to the Athletics acquiring Mike Minor from their division rival in the Rangers. And they got him for a nothing burger in Dustin Harris and a something burger in Marcus Smith. Last year, I wanted the Yankees to trade for Minor. He was an all-star last year. He's a lefty. I thought he was exactly what the Yankees needed. He had a really good year last year. Went 14-10 with a 3.59 ERA. But this year, he's 0-5 with a 5.6 ERA. He is dreadful this year. Make no mistake about it, he is abysmal. The fact that the Rangers were able to get anything for him is a miracle. And they actually got a pretty solid prospect in Smith. This guy is really athletic, really strong. I like his hands. He has really good fundamentals at the plate. It may take a while for this kid to put it all together, but I think he can. And because the Rangers were able to get anything of value for Minor, with the year he's having, means that the Rangers easily won this trade. Moving on now to the Marlins making a surprising trade for Starling Marte and giving up some pretty good pieces in Caleb Smith, Humberto Mejia, and Julio Frias. The Yankees were rumored to be in on Marte. He would have made a ton of sense. The Yankees need outfield help. They have a ton of injuries there. And Marte has always been a really good player. Really underrated. Really good with the glove. Really good with the bat. Hitting .311 this year. He has 5 steals. Starling Marte is a really, really good player. Frias is a nothing burger, so I'll talk about Caleb Smith. Smith has turned into a solid innings eater. He's nothing great. He's nothing terrible. I mean, he was hurt this year. He's only pitched 3 innings, but the Diamondbacks got a solid lefty starter. He's a good 4th starter on a World Series winning team. I know the Diamondbacks are light years away from winning a World Series, but in a perfect world, you'd have him as your 4th starter. And, fun fact, he was the pitcher who threw the ball that Aaron Judge fouled off that I ended up catching. And when you look at Humberto Mejia, he has some injury concerns, but this kid has a ton of talent, really good control on his fastball, good curveball, good slider. It's possible he could turn into a solid starter, but it's more likely he ends up in the bullpen. But there's no doubt about it in my mind. The Marlins won this trade. They're in the playoff hunt right now. It makes a ton of sense to add a quality player in Marte. Speaking of the Marlins, they traded Jonathan Villar to the Blue Jays for Mr. Marlin's son, Griffin Conine. And Villar is an underrated player. This guy started out as a utility infielder, but he's made himself a solid career as a starter in the middle infield. This year he's hitting .272. He's stolen 9 bases. He's a solid player. Make no mistake about it. And Bo Bichette is hurt for the Blue Jays, so Villar will give them a really good injury replacement there. As for Conine, it doesn't hurt that he's Jeff's son. Marlins fans really like Jeff Conine, and Derek Jeter did away with him, so it's a good move there to bring in some good feelings. Conine is all power, nothing else. He reminds me a lot of Rob Deere when I watch him play. That's who I see in him, just Rob Deere. And I don't really like guys like that. You've got to be able to do more. Because I'm not a big Conine fan, I'm going to say that the Blue Jays easily won this trade. Moving on now to the Diamondbacks, trading Archie Bradley to the Reds for Josh Van Meter and Stuart Fairchild. And while I know that Bradley is having a bad year this year, he still has a ton of talent. The fact that he's having a bad year this year wouldn't scare me off him. This guy's going to be a free agent in 2022, meaning that he has a year and a half left of team control. So he's going to right the ship. I mean, if he gets a full camp, I don't think there's a doubt about it that he's going to right the ship. Josh Van Meter is a nothing burger. Utility guy, can play all over the diamond. I like that, but he really doesn't do anything else that well. The guy who I'm interested in is Stuart Fairchild. He is a 5-tool player. It's possible that we'll see him maybe this year, definitely the year after. I'm going to call this an even trade. Stuart Fairchild is a very fair return for Archie Bradley. Moving on now to the Mets, trading Kevin Smith for Miguel Castro. And I don't know what the Mets are doing here. This makes no sense. Castro is okay, but he's not great. This year for the Orioles, he has a 4.02 ERA. The year before, 4.66. Alright, he's under team control for a while. What did he freaking do? He's a middle reliever. That's all he is. I understand the Mets need bullpen help. I saw it firsthand. But you don't give up Kevin Smith for this guy. Kevin Smith is a future starter in this league. Really good curveball, good fastball, imposing force on the mound. He's 6'5". His angle of delivery is insane. Really deceptive. I don't get it. This makes no sense to me for the Mets. The Orioles easily win this trade. It's not even close. Are the Mets trying to contend? They're not going to contend. It's done. That ship has sailed. My God. All these Mets fans shouting doom and gloom about their team. This was predictable. If you couldn't see it coming, you were looking at it through rose-colored glasses. It's just that simple. Moving on now to the NFL. And there were some huge stories there. Namely, Yannick Ngakoue finally being traded from the Jaguars. He's now a Viking. And the Jaguars got a second and a pick that will be in either the 3rd, 4th, or 5th round. The second rounder is going to be next year. That 3rd, 4th, or 5th rounder is going to be in 2022. There is no question that the Vikings won this trade. To pair him with Danielle Hunter makes that Vikings defensive line one of the scariest in the NFL. Hunter is incredibly underrated, and Ngakoue, according to Pro Football Focus last year, had a 72 overall grade. The Vikings lost Everson Griffin in free agency. He went to the Cowboys, and they replaced him with a much better option in Ngakoue. He is worth a second-round pick. Even if that other pick becomes a 3rd, he's still worth it. And Ngakoue took a pay cut to facilitate this trade. The Vikings know that their window to win is now. Kirk Cousins isn't getting any younger. I don't hate this trade for the Jaguars like some people do. They had to trade Ngakoue. I don't think they were really ever going to get a first for him. There were rumors that the Raiders were interested in him at one point, but that fell through. But the Vikings easily won this trade. Moving on now to the Dolphins trading Raekwon McMillan to the Raiders. The Raiders gave up a 4th-round pick next year for McMillan, but they are kicking in a 5th-rounder next year. And this makes a ton of sense for the Raiders. McMillan is a really underrated player. Had a good year for the Dolphins. Not great, not terrible. 63.9 overall grade last year. I mean, he's not fantastic or anything, but he's a solid player. He's really young also. He's 23 years old. There's a lot of talent there. And now think about this linebacker core. Nick Kwiatkowski, Corey Littleton, and Raekwon McMillan. That sounds really, really good to me. As for the Dolphins, I don't know why they did this. They spent big in free agency. It seemed like they were really going to make a go of things. Maybe they weren't going to make the playoffs, but they weren't going to tank again. I'm not saying that this is going to signal some massive exodus, but this trade just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. The Dolphins' linebacker core now is abysmal. The only one there with any talent is Kyle Van Noy. The Raiders win this trade. The Dolphins are huge, huge, huge losers. I really don't get this. Moving on now to the Texans locking up Zach Cunningham for 4 years at $58 million. And I don't mind this move at all for the Texans. I really liked Zach Cunningham coming out of Vanderbilt. My father went to Vanderbilt, so I saw him a lot. Cunningham has been really underrated since entering the NFL. He's never been great, but he's never been bad. He's always been really good. Last year was his best Pro Football Focus grade, and that was at 69 overall. 4 years at $58 million is a very fair contract for someone like that. This is a good move for the Texans. Now all they have to do is lock up Deshaun Watson. Moving on now to the Jaguars cutting Leonard Fournette. And look, I knew they weren't crazy about him. They declined his 5th-year option after all, but oh my God. The Jaguars are going to be terrible next year. They were going to be bad anyway after trading Ngakoue. And look, they had no talent on that roster anyway besides Ngakoue, Fournette, and Jack. But for God's sake, how do you just cut Leonard Fournette? Look, maybe he hasn't been worth the 4th overall pick, but he's still good. He rushed for over 1,100 yards last year. Okay, fine, he only rushed for 3 touchdowns. You know what? The Jaguars weren't scoring that many touchdowns last year. This move makes no sense whatsoever. I don't get it. And if I'm the Jets, I'm all over Fournette. The Kalen Ballage trade was canceled because he failed his physical, so everyone can breathe now. Le'Veon Bell is disappointed. Frank Gore is old. LaMichael Pirine is hurt. Bring in Fournette. He has talent. Speaking of the Jets, I just want to spend a little bit of time on them bringing in Dante Moncrief. The one thing I'll say is it makes a ton of sense. The Jets have been decimated by injuries at wide receiver. Denzel Mims, Vincent Smith, Jeff Smith. They really have no one. They have Jamison Crowder, Chris Hogan, Rashad Perryman, Josh Malone, and probably Jehu Chesson, or George Campbell, or Lawrence Cager. I mean, it doesn't get much worse than that. Joe Douglas decided to invest a lot in the offensive line to protect Sam Darnold. Didn't give him too many weapons. He let Robbie Anderson walk. He only drafted one wide receiver in this stacked wide receiver draft class. Yeah, the Jets need a lot of help at wide receiver. And Moncrief has had success in this league. I remember when he was really good for the Colts. He caught 64 passes for 733 yards and 6 touchdowns his sophomore year. Now, while Darnold is no Andrew Luck, Moncrief has talent. It makes sense to bring him in. But as it stands right now, the Jets have the worst wide receiver core in the NFL when you look at everyone who's healthy. Moving on now to the Giants signing Logan Ryan. Another reason why I'm posting this show late. The MLB trade deadline and Logan Ryan signing with the Giants for 1 year at $7.5 million. Why on God's green earth couldn't the Jets do this? They see him go to their rivals. The team that they share a stadium with. Another team that needs a cornerback. A team with huge familiarity with him. How did the Jets not go after him? Manish Mehta, you are a piece of garbage. You know that? You got my hopes up in May, and then the Giants just crap all over it. What a joke you are. You're an absolute joker. And Joe Douglas is too. Punting this season. Best player of all time leaves the division. Yeah, we're gonna bide our time. Mwahaha. No, we don't want Logan Ryan. We don't want Ngakoue. We don't want Clowney. What a joke. What a joke of a team. This is a great move for the Giants. It makes a ton of sense. Ryan is immensely talented. I was calling for him for a long time. They don't have Sam Beal. They don't have DeAndre Baker. Xavier McKinney's hurt. James Bradbury isn't that good to begin with. The Giants overpaid for him. Logan Ryan makes a ton of sense. Great move for the Giants. The real losers here are the Jets. I do want to talk about the 2 really sad deaths that happened in the sports world recently. And those were the deaths of Clifford Robinson and John Thompson. I'll start with Robinson, Uncle Cliffy. If you never saw him play, just think of Montrezl Harrell. He was very similar to Montrezl Harrell. I saw him play with the Nets a lot. He was past his prime when he got to the Nets. But make no mistake about it, he was really, really good once upon a time. In his rookie year, 89-90, Robinson played in 21 playoff games. That led the NBA. Now, it helped that the Trailblazers made the NBA Finals that year, losing to the Bad Boy Pistons in 5 games. But Robinson was solid. 6.5 points per game, 4 rebounds, 1 assist, steal, and block per game. He was really good. And that was on the heels of Robinson playing 82 games his rookie year. He seriously played in every game. In the regular season and the playoffs. As a rookie, that's really impressive. Both for durability and talent. For whatever it's worth, his regular season stats were 9 points a game, 3.8 rebounds per game, an assist per game, and half a steal and half a block per game. In 90-91, Robinson again played 82 games. And the Trailblazers went on another big playoff run. They won 63 games, but they were bounced in the Western Conference Finals by the Lakers in 6 games. Robinson was coming into his own, averaging just under 12 points a game, 4.5 rebounds per game, 2 assists per game, and he had a steal and a block per game. In the playoffs, he had 10.3 points per game, 4 rebounds, an assist per game, half a steal per game, and a block per game. He was an incredibly well-rounded player. The year after that was the last big playoff run that he would go on with the Trailblazers. The Blazers did make the NBA Finals that year. So in 2 of Robinson's first 3 years in the league, he made the NBA Finals. That was the famous Michael Jordan-Clyde Drexler series. In the regular season that year, Robinson continued his ascension, 12.5 points per game, 5 rebounds, and just under 2 assists per game. He also had a steal and almost a block and a half per game. Again, he played in 82 games, and he played in 21 games. In the playoffs, he averaged 10.8 points per game, 4.2 rebounds per game, and 2 assists, a steal, and a block per game. The year after that, Robinson took a huge leap. Again, he played in 82 games, but his production skyrocketed. 19 points per game, 6.5 rebounds per game, 2.2 assists per game, 1.2 steals per game, and 2 blocks per game. He averaged 2 blocks a game in a season, despite being 6'10". Like I said, Montrezl Harrell. He won 6th Man of the Year that year. Unfortunately for him, the Trailblazers lost to the Spurs in 4 games. The year after that, Robinson made his only All-Star game. He started primarily for the first time in his career. Again, 82 games per year. 20 points per game, just under 7 rebounds per game. Just under 2 assists per game, and just under a steal and a half and a block and a half per game. Yeah, that sounds like an all-star to me. Unfortunately for him, the Trailblazers were again eliminated in 4 games in the first round, this time by the Rockets. After that year, on February 22nd, 1995, Robinson didn't play. That ended his 461-game streak of consecutive games played to start his NBA career. I mean, that is insane. His durability and his production was incredible. I'll fast forward a little bit to the 99-2000 season. By then, Robinson was with the Phoenix Suns, and he was still putting up really good numbers. 18.5 points per game, 4.5 rebounds per game, just under 3 assists per game, and about a steal and a block per game. But that was when Robinson made his first all-defensive team. I'll fast forward a little bit again to 01-02. Robinson was now with the Detroit Pistons. He had been traded there. And in a harbinger of things to come for the Pistons, he once again made the all-defensive first team. He averaged over a steal and a block per game. He was just a force defensively. He was always a force defensively. I mean, I remember him with the Nets. Yes, his offense had dipped. He was not good offensively for the Nets. But defensively, he was really, really good. He was part of that saga of centers that I talked about in Decades of Dumbass Decisions. But it wasn't his fault. He was past his prime. He was being asked to do too much. In my opinion, Clifford Robinson should be in the Hall of Fame. There are certainly worse players than him in the Hall of Fame. He has just under 20,000 points. He has 19,591 to be specific. You want to call him a compiler? You can a little bit, but like I said, we have worse players in the Basketball Hall of Fame. There's no doubt in my mind that he should be enshrined in Springfield. He died on Saturday from lymphoma at the age of 53. May he rest in peace. The other really sad death concerns one of the best college basketball coaches of all time. No, I'm not talking about Lute Olson. I'm talking about another one, John Thompson. What he did at Georgetown was nothing short of fantastic. Before Thompson got to Georgetown, they were a laughingstock. They had only made the big dance once, and that was in 1943, when World War II was raging. Thompson inherited a terrible team. Jack McGee was the coach before Thompson. Georgetown only had 3 wins in McGee's last year there. It took Thompson a while, but by his 3rd year, he got Georgetown into the big dance, but they lost in the first round to the 1975 Central Michigan Chippewas by a score of 77-75. I'll fast forward a little bit to the 81-82 season. That was when Thompson made his first ever national championship game. And that Georgetown team was fantastic. Sleepy Floyd and Patrick Ewing were insane that year. Floyd led that Georgetown team in points per game with 16.7, and Patrick Ewing was one of the most dominant players in college basketball history. That game against UNC is remembered for one thing and one thing only. Fred Brown has the ball. He picks up his dribble. He's looking to pass it to someone. He fakes like he's going to pass it to someone else. I think it was Sleepy Floyd. James Worthy goes for the steal. He misses it, so he's behind the play. Brown has an unbelievable brain cramp, and he throws the ball away to James Worthy. So Worthy dribbles out the clock to win the game for the Tar Heels. I mean, I'll tell you one thing that Thompson could have done differently. Patrick Ewing got called for goaltending a lot in that game. I don't know exactly how many times, but there were a lot of times where Ewing was just being way too aggressive. But 2 years after that, Brown, Ewing, and Georgetown would get their revenge. Georgetown went 34-3 to win the Big East regular season championship and the tournament championship. And that team, led by Ewing, David Wingate, and Michael Jackson, defeated a Houston Cougars team that was led by Hakeem Olajuwon, 84-75. The year after that, the Hoyas made it back to the championship game, but they were stunned by Villanova, 66-64. That Nova team, as magical a run as they went on, and it was a magical run, make no mistake about it, they beat 4 top 2 teams. They weren't as good as Georgetown. You play that game 100 times, Georgetown wins 95 of them. The players that Thompson developed is a who's who of basketball greatness. Floyd, Ewing, Alonzo Mourning, Allen Iverson, who spoke very highly of Thompson after he died. Dikembe Mutombo also was there. I mean, his player development, especially when it came to big men, was second to none. If Lute Olson was great at developing point guards, Thompson was great at developing centers. And Thompson was a big guy, too. 6'10", 270. You didn't mess with him. He was this imposing force that just knew the game inside and out. You automatically respected him. And he died today at the age of 78. May he rest in peace. New York Yankees show later today. I'm going to aim for 6 p.m., but no promises. You will get it. I just don't know when exactly you're going to get it in the evening. It's going to be all about the trade deadline. Regular episode of the Jacob Valk Show coming your way as per usual tomorrow. Until next time, I am Jacob Valk saying that when Neil Armstrong set foot on the moon, he found 6 baseballs that Jimmy Fox hit in 1937.